I want to start by, well, asking you to think about something right now.
Oh, jumping right in. I like it.
Yeah, right in. Think about how we, in our modern world, how we are fundamentally conditioned to treat knowledge or success or like profound wisdom. We treat it like a cosmic vending machine.
Oh, absolutely. It is the ultimate meritocratic illusion, really.
It really is. You know
Yeah.
exactly what I mean. You walk up to the machine, you put in your currency.
Which for us is usually time.
You're right. It's your time, your rigorous study, relentless effort,
Yeah.
years of sweat and tears, maybe an 80-hour work week.
Yeah, the hustle.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And then you press the button and you fully expect the reward to drop down. The degree, the breakthrough,
Hopefully enlightenment.
the promotion, whatever it is. It's this very clean, linear equation that we are sold basically from childhood. Effort equals result.
Hmm.
Deservingness it's tied to labor.
And we find tremendous psychological comfort in that linear equation,
Oh, for sure, because it's predictable.
Right. It suggests the universe is manageable. It suggests there's a fair accounting system where human intention can literally purchase divine or intellectual insight. Like, if you work hard enough for the wisdom, you inherently deserve the wisdom.
And therefore, the universe is obligated to hand it over to you.
Precisely. The universe owes you the snack.
Right. But then you step into the world of ancient Celtic mythology, and suddenly you realize that this cosmic vending machine is completely, spectacularly broken.
It is entirely busted.
It really is. You put in your coin, you wait 40 years staring at the glass, and the snack falls out and rolls across the floor directly into the lap of someone who just walked into the room 5 seconds ago.
And that person wasn't even looking for a snack.
Exactly. They didn't want it. So we are looking at a mythological landscape today that is deeply, almost aggressively countercultural to everything you and I have been taught about ambition.
It really flips the script.
It does. It suggests that true, earth-shattering wisdom is never a prize to be won. It is an act of mysterious, often chaotic grace. And that brings us to the mission of our deep dive today.
Which is such a fantastic topic.
It is. We are exploring a truly fascinating text called The Redirected Gift, Destiny and the Vessels of Celtic Wisdom. And, well, it outlines this quiet, almost secret theme that runs across ancient Irish, Welsh, and Arthurian stories.
It's a pattern you almost miss if you aren't looking for it.
Right. It's the idea that wisdom almost never goes to the person who tries the hardest to get it.
Yeah, and when you really sit with the arguments presented in the redirected gift, it forces a complete paradigm shift. I mean, we are moving from a mindset of acquisition.
Where knowledge is something you conquer. Right.
Exactly, conquer or harvest.
Yeah.
We move from that to a mindset of destiny and vesselhood. The text unearths a pattern that is profound, yet, like I said, so easily overlooked if you're just reading these myths as simple fairy tales.
They aren't just bedtime stories.
Not at all. And to understand the architecture of this idea, we are going to trace the specific pattern of the redirected gift across 3 distinct legendary containers of wisdom.
We are going to look at a river, a cauldron, and a chalice. And I want you, the listener, to keep your own ambitions in the back of your mind as we go through this. Think about the things you were striving for right now.
That's a great framing for this.
Thanks. Because by examining these 3 vessels, we are going to understand why this ancient tradition insists that the most sacred knowledge cannot simply be seized by force, or by intellect, or sheer willpower.
It just doesn't work that way.
No. So let's unpack this. We have to start with the natural world, the most literal, tangible example from the text of someone trying to hunt for knowledge. We are going to ancient Ireland, to the legend of Fionn Cumhaill.
Or Finn McCool, as he's often known.
Right, Finn McCool.
Yeah.
And the magical ecosystem of the Salmon of knowledge.
Yeah, and to really grasp the existential weight of this myth, we need to immerse ourselves in the environment the text describes. I mean, this isn't just a guy fishing on a Sunday.
No, definitely not.
This is the River Boyne. In the Irish mythological cycle, the Boyne is a sacred liminal waterway. It's literally a boundary between the mortal world and the other world.
It's a thin place.
Exactly. And hanging over this dark, rushing water are 9 mystical hazel trees. Now, these aren't normal trees. They are the hazel trees of absolute wisdom.
I love this part.
They produce nuts that encapsulate all the knowledge, all the poetry, all the unseen mechanics of the universe.
I love the sensory imagery here. The idea that the deepest secrets of the cosmos aren't written in a book in the sky. Yeah.
Right, they aren't abstract concepts.
Exactly. They are packed into these dense, heavy little nuts, periodically dropping with a soft plop into the cold current of the river.
It roots the divine right in the organic. It's very grounded. And in that specific pool of the river swims a singular salmon. The salmon eats these fallen hazelnuts.
So it's basically eating raw data.
Yes. By digesting them, the fish physically ingests and embodies the wisdom of the world. The flesh of the fish becomes the flesh of universal truth, and the prophecy surrounding this creature is absolute.
Whoever catches and eats this specific salmon will instantly gain perfect omniscient knowledge.
They will see the past, the present, and the future, everything.
Which brings us to our first major figure, the druid Finnegas. If anyone is putting coins into the cosmic vending machine, it is this guy. Finnegas is a sage, a poet, a scholar of the highest order.
He's the ultimate academic.
Right. And the text emphasizes the sheer crushing duration of his quest. He doesn't just look for this fish for a weekend. He spends years.
Some versions of the lore imply his entire adult life.
Which is insane. Perhaps 40 or 50 years camped on the muddy, freezing banks of the River Boyne, trying to catch this one specific fish.
Just consider the psychological toll of that waiting.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. Think about the discipline, the relentless intentionality of that. You were out there in the rain, the sleet, watching the seasons change decades over.
Isolating yourself from society.
Exactly. From a normal life, a family, all for this singular pursuit. He is the ultimate seeker. He has dedicated his entire mortal existence to the pursuit of this wisdom.
Finnegas is really the embodiment of human effort. He represents study, rigorous discipline, and, well, the fundamental belief of the scholar.
Which is what?
That if you just stay focused long enough, if you refine your techniques, if you put in the hours, you can capture the divine. He is operating on the assumption that wisdom is the logical, guaranteed endpoint of a long enough trajectory of hard work.
And then the impossible happens. The climax of his life's work actually arrives. He catches it. He pulls the salmon of knowledge out of the Boyne.
Finally.
I try to imagine the overwhelming triumph he must have felt in that moment. The vindication. Everyone who thought he was crazy, the decades of cold nights, it all paid off. He holds the universe in his hands.
But he doesn't need it immediately.
No, which is wild. He has a young apprentice, Fionn. Fionn is just a kid at this point, essentially a servant doing the manual labor of the camp, learning from the great master. Finnegas hands the raw fish to Fionn and tells him to roast it over the spit.
A seemingly simple task.
But he gives him one strict, absolute, terrifying command. Do not taste it. Do not eat a single bite of this fish.
A command that perfectly sets up the inevitable catastrophic turning point of the myth. Because the universe, as the text argues, does not care about Finnegas's intentionality.
Not at all. So Fionn is dutifully roasting the salmon over the fire. And as the fish is cooking, the heat causes the skin of the salmon to bubble. A large blister forms on the side of the fish.
Which is a very normal thing when cooking fish.
Right, totally mundane. Fionn, just trying to do his job, trying not to ruin the master's prize, reaches out with his thumb to press the blister down to ensure it cooks evenly.
He's just trying to be helpful.
Exactly. But in doing so, the blister bursts. A drop of the boiling hot fish fat splatters directly onto his thumb, burning him severely. Now, let's pause here. Think about what happens to your body when you burn yourself on a stove.
It is an instantaneous autonomic response. The signal goes from your nerve endings to your spinal cord and back. It doesn't even reach the conscious decision-making centers of your brain before you act.
Exactly. You don't form a committee in your head to decide the best course of action.
You don't weigh the pros and cons.
No. Instinct takes over completely. Fionn instantly shoves his burned, fat-covered thumb into his mouth to soothe the searing pain. He sucks on the burn. And in that tiny, accidental, thoughtless microsecond of tasting the juices of the fish bone,
the paradigm shifts forever.
he accidentally absorbs all the perfect knowledge of the universe.
Yeah.
The wisdom of the hazelnuts, the magic of the river, the sight of all things past and future. It all rushes into this teenage servant.
Not because he studied.
Right. Not because he sat in the rain for 40 years,
Huh.
but because he was clumsy while making dinner.
It's incredible, the structural brilliance of this myth, and what the source text really wants us to focus on here is the stark contrast between these two characters and the archetypes they embody.
Finnegas versus Fionn.
Yes. Finnegas is effort. He is intention. He is the ego asserting its right to possess the sacred. Fionn, on the other hand, represents the chosen vessel. He represents destiny. He represents an empty cup waiting to be filled.
The text explicitly argues that in this Celtic framework, true transformative wisdom fundamentally ignores effort, doesn't it?
It absolutely ignores it. It follows recognition by fate instead.
I have to be honest, when you look at this through our modern lens, it feels incredibly unfair. It makes you want to pull your hair out.
Oh, it's infuriating.
Let's bring this into the 21st century. Imagine Finnegas is an exhausted, brilliant medical researcher. He has spent 40 years in a fluorescent-lit, sterile lab. He has missed his kids growing up. He has sacrificed his physical health.
Ruined his marriage, probably.
Probably. He has run tens of thousands of failed, agonizing clinical trials to find a cure for a terrible, ravaging disease. And Fionn is the 19-year-old summer intern who is only there to wash the beakers.
Just fulfilling a high school credit.
Right. On a random Tuesday, Fionn trips over a microscope cable, knocks two random unlabeled vials together, and accidentally cures a disease. If I am Finnegas in that scenario, I am furious. I am throwing a microscope through a window. I am screaming at the sky about the sheer injustice of it all.
And understandably so. You would feel entirely robbed. Because in a transactional universe, Finnegas bought and paid for that wisdom with the currency of his lifespan.
He paid his dues.
He did. But the source material highlights what is perhaps the most beautiful, counterintuitive, and quiet resolution in all of world mythology. When Fionn comes back to his master, thumb still throbbing, Finnegas looks at him.
The moment of truth.
And the old druid sees it instantly. He sees the light of universal knowledge in the boy's eyes. The aura of the boy has fundamentally changed. Finnegas knows exactly what has happened. His 40-year dream is dead.
And he doesn't throw a fit. This is the part of the text that absolutely stopped me in my tracks.
He doesn't attack the boy. He doesn't curse the gods. He doesn't wallow in bitterness. The text notes that Finnegas simply looks at Fionn, recognizes the divine redirection, and says, "Eat it yourself, for the wisdom has gone to you."
Eat it yourself. It gives me chills.
It's amazing. In that single sentence, Finnegas transcends his own ego and ambition. He recognizes the fundamental law of the Celtic spiritual framework that wisdom is a redirected gift.
He just accepts it.
He accepts, in a moment of crushing but liberating clarity, that he was never meant to be the final destination of that knowledge. His entire life's purpose was merely to be the instrument required to bring the fish out of the river so that the true vessel, this boy, could receive it.
Which is an act of supreme humility and spiritual maturity that we almost never celebrate in our modern culture.
No, we really don't.
It is profound. But as I was reading this, my immediate skeptical thought was, is this just an isolated fluke? Like, is the salmon of knowledge just one weird anecdotal story about a fish? Or is this actually a foundational rule of this mythological universe?
And the author of the text anticipates that exact skepticism. They seamlessly move our attention from the waters of Ireland to the hills of Wales to prove that this is not a fluke.
Okay, so a totally different region.
Yes. It reveals a striking, almost mathematical parallel in Welsh mythology, but the scenario escalates. If the Irish salmon represents natural, elemental wisdom that just organically exists in the world, our next vessel represents crafted, forced, transformative wisdom.
Human intervention.
Exactly. We are looking at the cauldron of Ceridwen.
Right, so we are moving from the passive waiting of Finnegas to active, aggressive creation.
Yeah.
We meet Ceridwen. She is a powerful enchantress. And unlike Finnegas, who is seeking wisdom for his own enlightenment, Ceridwen's motivation is intensely relatable.
It's very human.
It is. It's maternal love, entangled with deep maternal ambition. She has a son, Morfran, who is described as being incredibly ugly and disadvantaged. She wants to level the playing field for him.
She wants to give him an edge.
She wants to grant him the ultimate overriding advantage in life. Prophetic inspiration, universal knowledge, the gift of poetic genius. She wants to ensure his success in a cruel world.
It is the ultimate mythological equivalent of helicopter parenting. She is going to literally manufacture a destiny for her child.
Exactly. Think of the modern parent who hires 6 private tutors, gets their kid on 3 elite sports teams, and calls the college admissions office every day. She decides to brew this incredibly potent, dangerous, magical potion in her massive cauldron to force the universe to make her son brilliant.
But the mechanics of this magic are brutally exacting. The text notes that this potion cannot just be whipped up in an afternoon. It must simmer continuously, without stopping, for exactly a year and a day.
That's a massive commitment.
Huge. It requires a massive influx of rare botanical ingredients gathered at specific astrological times. It requires constant, unyielding heat. And most importantly, it requires constant stirring.
It's a logistical nightmare.
It really is a massive, sustained, exhausting, magical, industrial complex.
And Ceridwen, being a high-level enchantress, isn't going to stand there stirring a boiling pot herself for 366 days.
Hmm.
So she delegates. She hires a local, totally unremarkable young boy named Gwion Bok.
Just a local kid.
Right. His entire existence, his only task in this grand magical working is just to stand there and push a wooden spoon through the sludge. He isn't an apprentice like Fionn. He isn't learning magic. He isn't studying the esoteric arts.
No, he's basically a temp worker.
He is performing mindless manual labor, the physical drudgery of keeping the pot moving while Ceridwen does the intellectual heavy lifting.
He is the equivalent of Fionn turning the spit over the fire. He is proximity without intention. He has no stake in the outcome of the potion whatsoever.
So a year and a day passes. The potion is finally reaching its absolute, terrifying peak of potency. The magic is coalescing into a volatile state. And right at the critical moment, the cauldron bubbles violently. The pressure is too much.
Just like the blister on the fish.
Exactly. 3 searingly hot, concentrated drops of this ultimate wisdom brew splash out of the vat. And where do they land? They bypass the enchantress, they bypass her son standing nearby, they land directly on the thumb of young, exhausted Gwion Bok.
And we see the exact same physical, biological reaction.
Yes. Gwion is burned. It hurts immensely. Instinct completely overrides any conscious thought. He immediately shoves his screaming, burned thumb into his mouth to cool the burning skin with his saliva.
And instantly, the exact same cosmic transaction happens.
He absorbs all the universal knowledge, all the prophetic inspiration, all the magical insight that Ceridwen had spent a year and a day painstakingly, obsessively brewing for her own son.
The structural parallels are undeniable, and the text spells them out with incredible clarity. Look at the formula. Wisdom emerges from a specific source, be it a salmon or a cauldron.
Okay.
An older guardian or intended recipient is waiting, having put in an immense amount of deliberate effort to secure the gift.
Finnegas and Ceridwen.
Right. The knowledge is accidentally transferred through the medium of a burned thumb, and the wisdom entirely bypasses the intended, deserving target to land in a young, unexpected, seemingly irrelevant figure of destiny.
But the aftermath of the Welsh story is totally different. Because unlike Finnegas, Ceridwen does not achieve that quiet spiritual maturity. She does not accept this gracefully.
No, she does not take it well at all.
She is absolutely furious. Her year of labor, her son's future, ruined by an intern. Gwion Bok, who now possesses universal knowledge, instantly sees into her mind and realizes she is going to murder him on the spot.
So he bolts.
He flees. And what ensues is this epic, mythic, terrifying, shape-shifting chase. It is wild. He turns into a hare to run. She turns into a greyhound to chase him. He leaps into a river and turns into a fish.
She turns into an otter.
Right. He launches into the air as a bird. She turns into a hawk and dives at him. Finally, exhausted, he drops into a barn, turns himself into a single microscopic grain of wheat, and hides in a pile of grain on the floor.
A needle in a haystack.
Exactly. She swoops down, transforms into a crested black hen, scratches around, finds him, and eats him.
It is a literal consumption, the ultimate destruction of the physical self.
Right. It seems like she won. But because Gwion is now imbued with his divine foundational magic, he doesn't just digest and die. He is gestated inside her womb. The ego of Gwion Bok is destroyed, but the divine essence is reborn.
9 months later, she gives birth to him.
And because he is so ethereally beautiful, possessing this ancient soul, she can't bring herself to kill the infant. So she puts him in a litter bag and throws him into the sea. He floats for a while, is eventually rescued in a salmon weir by a prince, and grows up to become Taliesin.
Taliesin.
And Taliesin, for those who don't know Welsh myth, becomes the greatest bard, the greatest poet, prophet, and counselor in the history of Britain.
The boy who was hired just to stir the pot becomes the defining voice of an entire civilization. The redirected gift essentially creates the cultural bedrock of Wales.
Now, I want to pause here because this is where the text really got its hooks into me. I want to talk about this exact repetition of the burned thumb motif.
It's such a specific detail.
It is. It happens in Ireland. It happens in Wales. Cultures separated by water, yet the mechanic is identical. Why a thumb? Why a burn? You and I were talking earlier about how Finnegas and Ceridwen both represent deliberate, calculated, almost aggressive intention. Is the text suggesting that gaining true wisdom requires a moment of sudden, unexpected pain? A trauma? Or is it more about the neurobiology of soothing a burn being an unthinking animal instinct?
It is a phenomenal question, and it is the crux of the text's psychological argument. The author leans heavily into the latter interpretation, the bypass of the ego, though the element of sudden pain is absolutely the necessary catalyst.
The spark.
Yes. The myth is suggesting that true poetic insight, true divine inspiration, fundamentally must bypass our deliberate, rational intention. Why? Because our rationality is bound by our ego. When you burn your hand, the journey of bringing that hand to your mouth does not pass through the conscious planning centers of your frontal lobe.
You aren't strategizing. You aren't thinking, if I do this, I will look smart or I will gain an advantage.
Exactly. It is entirely autonomic. It is instinctual. The text asserts that this repeated thumb motif is an ancient way of showing us that profound wisdom comes unbidden. It cannot be summoned. You cannot plan to accidentally burn your thumb.
You can't schedule it.
Right. You cannot schedule a moment of spontaneous grace in your Google Calendar. It is a pure, unadulterated accident. But it is an accident that the universe utilizes as a loophole to bypass the human ego.
Because the ego blocks it.
Yes. Finnegas and Ceridwen, for all their preparation, for all their brilliance, are operating purely from the ego. I will catch the fish. I will empower my son. I will control the outcome.
Whereas Guion and Fionn
Have no ego in the transaction. They are entirely empty vessels in that microsecond. They are simply biological organisms reacting to a sudden sensation of heat. And into that empty space, that thoughtless, instinctive void where the ego has momentarily vanished, the vast, terrifying wisdom of the universe pours in.
that completely flips how I view ambition. The ego is the barrier. Our conscious intention, ironically, becomes the very armor that deflects the grace we are trying to receive. Because we're trying to grab it on our terms, we close our hands so tight that we can't catch the water.
Precisely. To receive the redirected gift, the hands must be open. The mind must be surprised.
Okay, so we've looked at the natural container, the river where wisdom is just floating around waiting. We've looked at the magical container, the cauldron, where human beings try to forcefully manufacture wisdom. Now, the text transitions us to the most complex, the most psychologically devastating, and the most overtly spiritual container of all.
The third vessel.
We are moving out of the early, primal pagan mythology of the Celts and stepping into the highly codified, medieval Christian Arthurian romances. We're looking at an evolution of the soul. We have to talk about the chalice, the Holy Grail.
Yes, this is where the archetype matures and takes on a deeply psychological, almost psychoanalytic weight. The source text introduces us to the tragic figure of the Fisher King. In the massive, sprawling Arthurian cycle, the Fisher King is the designated guardian, the keeper of the Holy Grail.
Okay.
And the Grail in this context is the ultimate sacred object. It is the vessel of divine sustenance, ultimate spiritual revelation, and direct connection to the grace of God.
But the Fisher King's situation is desperately, hopelessly sad. He possesses the Grail. It is right there in his castle. He is the lord of the domain, but he cannot use it. He cannot drink from it.
The ultimate paradox.
The myth tells us that the Fisher King has suffered a grievous, mysterious wound, often described in the texts as a wound to the thigh or the groin. It is a wound that refuses to heal. It's constantly bleeding, constantly agonizing.
And because, in the ancient Celtic tradition that underpins these medieval stories, the physical health of the king is intimately, magically tied to the fertility of the land, his unhealing wound causes the environment around his castle to die.
It becomes barren. The crops fail, the rivers dry up, the animals die, the people starve. This is the origin of the famous literary motif known as the wasteland.
It is perhaps the most profound image of spiritual stagnation in Western literature. Think about the tragedy here. He is the guardian of the ultimate source of healing and eternal life, the Grail itself. Yet he is slowly dying of rot, and his entire world is dying around him.
He is starving at a banquet.
The text highlights this as the ultimate tragedy of the keeper. The Grail exists, its power is absolute and real, but for the Fisher King, its meaning and its utility remain entirely unrealized. He is trapped in a state of agonizing preservation.
So he is sitting there day after day in excruciating pain, guarding this ultimate treasure that is completely useless to him. And then the door opens. The young, incredibly naive, uneducated knight arrives at the castle. Parsifal, or Percival, depending on the text.
That's foolish, knight.
No, when you read this through the lens of our previous myths, Parsifal is the Fionn. He is the Gwion Bach. He is the young, innocent, egoless figure of destiny walking into the room where the keeper has been waiting. He arrives at the Grail Castle. He sees the suffering king on his litter. He watches the bizarre, mystical procession of the Grail through the hall. He is standing in the very presence of the ultimate mystery.
The conditions are perfectly, immaculately set for their redirected gift. The keeper is present. The vessel is present. The naive bearer has arrived.
But wait, here is where I completely push back on the text, or at least where I noticed a massive, frustrating deviation from the established pattern.
It throws a wrench in the gears.
It really does. The text notes that in the original early versions of the Arthurian story, Parsifal fails the first time. He watches the whole procession, he sees the king bleeding and suffering, but he remains completely silent. He fails to ask the crucial, compassionate question, which the myth says is the only thing that can unlock the Grail's power.
He doesn't say a word.
The question is usually some variation of, whom does the Grail serve? Or simply, what ails you, uncle? He stays quiet because prior to arriving, he was taught by his chivalric mentors that a good, polite knight doesn't ask too many prying questions.
He's following the rules.
He thinks he's being respectful. He wakes up the next morning, the castle is completely empty, the Grails is gone, and he has failed his destiny. Now, look at Fionn and Guillaume. They got the wisdom instantly, purely by accident. The universe demanded nothing of them. Why is Parsifal different? Why does the universe suddenly change the rules and let him fail?
It is a brilliant observation, and it's exactly where the text takes its deepest philosophical dive. If we connect this to the bigger picture of cultural evolution, the source text explains that the Grail tradition is an evolution of human consciousness.
How so?
It takes the older, primal Celtic motif of the instantaneous, almost mechanical magic trick burn thumb, gets smart, and transforms it into a complex, morally demanding Christian mystical framework. The underlying structural pattern is identical. A guardian possesses a sacred object but cannot use it, and a younger figure arrives who is destined to receive its deeper meaning.
But there's a catch now.
Right, but the Arthurian romance adds a vital, excruciating new requirement for the bearer. Readiness.
Readiness. So the universe isn't just handing it out randomly to whoever happens to burn their thumb anymore. It demands something of the vessel.
Exactly. Fionn and Guillaume were given the gift through pure passive accident, but the Grail demands spiritual maturation. It demands active empathy. Parsifal's failure is not a failure of intellect. It is a failure of compassion. He relies on the rigid, socially constructed rules he was taught. Don't ask polite questions. Be a stoic knight. Instead of responding natural to the raw human suffering right in front of him. He prioritizes decorum and ego over love.
He was more worried about looking like a good knight than helping a dying man.
Precisely. The text suggests a terrifying evolution of the myth. You cannot receive the ultimate spiritual revelation, even if it is your destiny, if your heart is closed. The gift will bypass you too.
So he misses his chance. And because of that, he has to go back out into the brutal world. The text mentions he spends years, sometimes 5 years, wandering through the wasteland, fighting, suffering, losing his faith, getting his heart broken, learning actual grinding humility. He has to be stripped of his rigid knightly ego.
Yes, the universe breaks him down. And only when he is spiritually broken open, only when he has truly suffered and understands the pain of the king, does the universe allow the Grail castle to magically reappear on his path.
He gets a second chance.
He returns. And this time, when he sees the bleeding king, he doesn't remember his etiquette lessons. He responds with pure, unthinking humanity. He asks the question, what ails you?
The ego is gone.
Exactly. In that moment of genuine, egoless compassion, the king is instantly healed, the rivers of the wasteland flow again, the barren earth blooms, and Parsifal becomes the rightful, enlightened guardian of the Grail.
It's a stunning evolution of the myth. It moves from accidental grace to earned grace. But I want to go back to what you said a moment ago about the wasteland. This concept of the keeper possessing the truth, being surrounded by it, but being utterly unable to embody it. That feels so incredibly relevant to our modern psychological state.
It is the tragedy of knowing without understanding. The text dives deep into this modern application. The wasteland is the psychological state of possessing the vocabulary of wisdom, but lacking the experiential truth of it.
Oh, that's powerful.
You can have all the theology books in the world in your library. You can go to therapy for 20 years and know all the buzzwords.
Right, you can talk the talk.
You can have all the money and the status, but if your heart is bitter, if your empathy is blocked, you are the wounded king sitting in a barren land. You are starving while holding the menu. The keeper preserves the vessel, but the bearer is required to actualize its power.
That is a perfect transition because I want to zoom out.
Yeah.
Having laid out these 3 distinct stories, the salmon of the river, the cauldron of the witch, the chalice of the king, the source text pulls back to analyze the symbiotic relationship between these 2 recurring archetypes.
Your big picture.
We see them operating in every single story, locked in this complex dynamic.
Yes. The text explicitly categorizes them into two necessary halves of the whole, the keeper of wisdom and the bearer of wisdom.
Right. Let's recap so we have this crystal clear. The keepers are Finnegas, the patient druid, Ceridwen, the ambitious enchantress, and the agonizing Fisher King.
And the bearers are Fionn the apprentice, Taliesin the boy, and Parsifal the wandering knight.
And what is absolutely vital to understand, and the text makes this its central culminating argument, is that this is not an antagonistic relationship. It is not a story of winners and losers.
No, not at all. It is an archetypal dance. It is a symbiotic cosmic necessity.
So what does this all mean for us? When I was reading this part of the text, I had to stop reading, put the book down, and really think about the sheer, crushing humility required to be a keeper. Modern society, our entire culture, exclusively worships the bearer.
We obsess over the bearer.
We put the bearer on the cover of magazines, the innovator, the prodigy, the hero who swoops in at the last minute and makes the massive breakthrough. We worship the Fionns and the Taliesin's and the Parsifals. We build statues of them. But imagine being Finnegas.
It's a hard pill to swallow.
Imagine being told by the universe, your sole purpose in this grand tapestry is to sit by a freezing river for 40 years, staring at the water, cultivating endless patience, enduring the rain, sacrificing your own glory, simply so that you can pull a fish out of the water for someone else to eat.
It challenges the very core of our individualistic, ego-driven culture. It tells us that we are not all meant to be the main character of the ultimate revelation.
Completely. It takes profound grace to accept that your entire life's work, everything you built, is merely preparing the ground for someone younger, perhaps someone who seems entirely undeserving or accidental, to reap the ultimate reward.
It's the ultimate act of service.
Think about a parent building a business from scratch, knowing they will never see the true wealth of it, only to pass it to a child. Or a teacher who spends 40 years in a public school pouring their soul into students, knowing the students will go on to change the world while the teacher remains in that same classroom.
This is where the text offers a truly profound spiritual interpretation of the myths. It systematically breaks down the illusion that wisdom or progress is ever an individual achievement. The source argues that wisdom actually emerges at the exact intersection of preparation and grace, the keeper and the bearer. Neither can exist without the other.
The spark needs the tinder.
Precisely. Let's look at the mechanics of the myths again, purely on a logistical level. Fionn's miraculous encounter with the salmon was entirely 100% dependent on Finnegas's lifelong, agonizing obsession.
Fionn never would have been there.
He would never have been by the river. He would never have been holding that specific fish over that specific fire if Finnegas hadn't caught it first. Gwynnbach would never have received universal inspiration if Ceridwen hadn't spent a year tirelessly foraging for magical herbs, calculating astrological charts, and keeping the fire hot.
And the Fisher King.
The Fisher King, despite his agonizing, putrefying pain, endures. He stays alive. He keeps the Grail safe through the dark, violent ages of the wasteland until Parsifal is finally mature enough to arrive and ask the question.
So the keeper isn't a failure. The keeper isn't the leaser of the story. The keeper is the bridge.
Exactly. The text emphasizes that wisdom unfolds across generations. It is not constrained to the narrow, selfish timeline of a single human lifespan. We are all participating in a mystery that is vastly larger than our own personal ambitions, our own resumes, or our own egos.
That's a huge relief, honestly.
It is. One generation prepares the ground, gathers the ingredients, endures the waiting and the cold. The next generation receives the flowering insight. The keeper's role is absolutely essential to the survival of the sacred.
And as the text points out, with Finnegas's quiet, immediate acceptance, eat it yourself. Recognizing your role as the keeper is in itself a form of profound enlightenment. To know you are the bridge is to understand the universe.
It's a different kind of wisdom, but just as valid.
It is a massive liberation from the pressure of having to be the one who figures it all out. It relieves the anxiety of our modern ambition. Okay, before we wrap up this incredible journey, I want to look closely at the objects themselves, as the text does in its concluding analysis. The physical vessels that hold this redirected gift, because they tell a story of their own.
The containers of the sacred. They represent the different ways humanity encounters truth.
Yes. We have the river Boyne, which the text associates with natural elemental wisdom. The water continuously flowing, the trees dropping nuts in their own time. It's the organic rhythm of the earth that ignores human schedules.
You can't rush a river.
Then we have the cauldron of Ceridwen, which represents magical, transformative, human-driven wisdom. Alchemy, the attempt to force a change of state through applied heat and immense pressure. And finally, the Grail, the ultimate symbol of mysterious, moral, spiritual sustenance, the direct divine connection.
And if we look at the mechanics of all three stories, what is the unifying rule among all three of these vastly different containers?
You cannot force them. None of them can be possessed by brute strength, by intellect, or by sheer willpower.
That is the crux of the entire thesis. The text makes it explicitly clear. The sacred must be approached at the right moment by the right person with the right openness of heart. If you try to aggressively grasp the water of the river, it slips right through your fingers.
If you try to aggressively control the magic of the cauldron, it boils over, splashes, and burns you.
If you demand healing from the Grail with a closed, arrogant heart, it vanishes into thin air. This raises an important question, one that I think the text invites every reader to consider directly in their own lives.
I know exactly where you were going with this. It brings the mythology right into our living rooms.
It asks us to look at our own daily struggles. How often do we try to force an understanding of our own circumstances? How often do we aggressively interrogate our lives, demanding that the universe yield its meaning to us right now on our terms because we feel we have earned it through our suffering or our hard work?
We do it all the time.
These Celtic myths act as an ancient mirror, reflecting back to us the futility of that aggression. They tell us that the sacred, whether that is artistic inspiration, spiritual peace, the resolution of a family conflict, or just a deep understanding of our own chaotic path, cannot be bullied into submission. You cannot put a coin in the machine and kick it until enlightenment falls out.
It has to be encountered. The text uses that exact word, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
Wisdom is not manufactured, it is encountered.
Yes, it requires an open palm, not a clenched fist.
That brings me back to what I truly think is the emotional center of this entire source material, and the most poignant, difficult lesson we can take from it. It brings us right back to the muddy banks of the River Boyne, to that moment with the old druid. The quiet lesson. Venegas, looking at the boy whose thumb is glowing with the secrets of the cosmos, seeing his own lifelong dream realized in someone else, and just exhaling, letting it all go, dropping the ego. Eat it yourself, for the wisdom is gone to you.
The ultimate graceful surrender to the flow of destiny.
Right. And I want to ask you, the listener, to deeply consider this in the context of your own life right now.
Yeah.
Where are you standing in the freezing river, exhausted, shivering, holding a net, trying to force the salmon of knowledge into your grasp?
That's the million-dollar question.
Where are you demanding a breakthrough in your career, in your relationship, in your personal growth that just isn't coming, no matter how hard you work? Is it possible, and this is a radical, almost heretical thought in our hustle culture, is it possible that in some specific areas of your life, your role is not to be the hero who receives the ultimate revelation?
Is it possible your role is to be the honorable keeper?
Yes. To be the one who does the unglamorous, diligent, unseen work of preparing the way. To hold this space, to gather the knowledge, to build the foundation so that someone else, maybe your children, maybe a junior colleague, maybe someone you will never even meet, can accidentally trip over your life's work and change the world.
Wow.
And if you reframe your struggles that way, how incredibly liberating might it be to accept that? To realize you haven't failed at all. You were just playing a different, equally vital, deeply honorable part in the myth.
It completely removes the bitter sting of unfulfilled ambition and replaces it with a profound sense of cosmic participation. You are part of the unfolding. You are the necessary ground from which the tree grows.
Absolutely. Now, as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, deeply intriguing, almost haunting detail from the text. Something for you to mull over long after you finish listening today. The source material mentions a specific detail about Fionn Cumhaill later in his life, long after the incident by the river, when he had become a legendary warrior and leader.
The permanent mechanism of his wisdom.
Exactly. Whenever Fionn as an adult was faced with an impossible problem, or needed to access his universal wisdom, he didn't have to go find another magic fish. He didn't have to cast a spell or read a scroll. All he had to do was place that exact same scarred thumb back into his mouth. The physical memory of the burn, the remnant of the injury, became his permanent, lifelong bridge to the divine.
It is a stunning psychological image. The scar is the key that unlocks the mind.
It is. And it forces us to ask a profound question about our own pain. If the initial receipt of wisdom was an accident of grace, but it was born from a moment of sharp, unexpected physical or emotional pain, the burn on the thumb, does that imply that the memory of our pain is what permanently connects us to our deepest understanding?
It changes how you view your scars.
Think about your own life. What are the burned thumbs in your history? What are those painful, accidental, traumatic moments that completely blindsided you, that bypassed all your careful planning and intentionality, but ultimately became your greatest source of lifelong insight? You didn't ask for the burn, you didn't want the pain.
No one does.
But now, years later, it is the exact place you touch when you need to understand the world, when you need to deploy empathy, when you need to know what is true.
It is a powerful, comforting reminder that our deepest, most transformative wisdom often leaves a mark. And that mark is not a failure, it is an antenna.
It truly is. Well, that is all the time we have for this deep dive into the redirected gift. It's been an absolute joy and honestly a bit of a therapeutic experience unpacking this with you. We hope this exploration encourages you to keep seeking, keep stirring the pot, keep guarding the castle of your own life. But perhaps, every now and then, remember to stop forcing the river. Take a breath, look at the sky, and leave a little room for the accidental grace of a redirected gift. Thanks for joining us.